Chosen One, you didn't find this video by accident. This message was set in motion long ago. What if I told you they have been afraid of your bloodline since before you were born? You weren't drawn here to be entertained. You were summoned to remember what they made you forget. They knew you carried ancient codes in your DNA that threatened every illusion they built. In this exact moment, the currents of time have aligned to reveal truths that will shake the foundations of the very systems that try to keep you silent. They have watched you, tracked you, and tried to erase the spark of your lineage, but now the spark ignites a fire that no shadow can extinguish. You have felt the pang of not fitting in, the constant sense of being watched, the whisper in the wind urging you to awaken. Your experiences were never random or isolated. They were deliberate moves on a cosmic chessboard. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below. Know this: the revelations unfolding here will guide you to reclaim a heritage built on prophecy, divine assignment, and unstoppable purpose. Stay with me until the end, for what you will learn will set you free and reveal why the system trembles at your very existence. The spiritual mark on your bloodline. Have you ever woken from a dream where your reflection in a rippling pool looked back at you with eyes that seemed older than time itself? In that twilight moment, you sense a presence beneath your own, as if an echo of ancestors stirred something deep within your chest. That dream was not mere fancy. It was a soft summons, revealing that your life is threaded with frequency beyond ordinary comprehension. You carry a glow, subtle but unmistakable, one that flickers in quiet moments when the world seems still. It is the mark of your bloodline, a resonance that pulses through your veins and beckons you toward a purpose they feared long before you took your first breath. This is your invitation, to see that the hum you've always heard in your soul is the echo of a lineage chosen to hold a truth too potent to be contained. There were times you moved through crowded rooms feeling as though an invisible barrier separated you from everyone else. You may have questioned why laughter felt hollow, why spoken words often miss their mark, or why simple pleasures fail to satisfy the longing stirring in your heart. Perhaps you recall nights spent staring at the stars, your mind buzzing with questions no teacher could answer. In those moments, you try to explain your sensitivity to friends and family, only to be met with blank stares or a gentle dismissal. They told you that your feelings were exaggerated, your dreams too grand, your intuition unreliable. But beneath their words, you sense a quiet conspiracy, a subtle hush that urged you to shrink, to forget the fire coursing within. Yet even as you question your own worth, the mark of your bloodline throbbed like a secret heartbeat, reminding you that isolation was never mistake, but calibration, aligning you to a hidden frequency. Imagine now that every pang of confusion, every glance that lingered too long, every moment you felt unmoored, were not accidents but brushstrokes on a grand design. Consider the words of Jeremiah 1 verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, whispering that your destiny was forged before your first cry. In that light, your sensitivity transforms from a curse into a compass, guiding you through a landscape crafted by unseen hands. There has always been a hidden architecture to your journey, a divine blueprint etched into your family so long before your eyes could read it. The obstacles you faced, echoes of doubt spoken in hushed tones, expectations set not for your dreams but for their comfort, were measures to test the glow of your inheritance. Each trial was a brushfire to purify your vision, and every moment of being labeled too much was actually proof that you carried a wavelength they could neither mimic nor suppress. In the hush that follows a lightning strike of revelation, you begin to notice the subtle ciphers written into your everyday life. A sequence of numbers recurs in your world, on license plates, clock faces, phone numbers, each one catching your attention with uncanny insistence. Dreams return, carrying images of ancient symbols carved into stone, or of a distant ancestor beckoning you from the shadows of a half-remembered vision. You feel a tremor run through your spine when certain words spill into your consciousness unbidden, phrases that resonate like keys given open doors in your mind. Perhaps you experience déjà vu in the most mundane settings, a street you've never walked yet feels familiar, a melody that unlocks a memory you cannot place. These are not random glitches. They are the first tendrils of awakening, coaxing you to see reality as a living manuscript designed to guide you back to your heritage. In acknowledging these signs, you begin to reframe your world as a tapestry threaded with intentional clues, each one a whisper from a bloodline urging you to remember. There is a moment, often imperceptible, when internal alignment begins to unfold like dawn breaking over a horizon you cannot yet name. Suddenly, your intuition stops feeling like a frightening pulse and becomes a beacon of quiet certainty. You may find yourself pausing before speaking, aware of a soft voice urging restraint or clarity. In conversations, you sense undercurrents of meaning that once swirl beneath your awareness, nuances that tip you off to unspoken truths. That quiet confirmation of your inner knowing, felt as a grounding sigh in your chest, signals that the mark on your bloodline is asserting itself beyond doubt. You are not imagining things when you feel that electric jolt in response to certain people or ideas. Your spirit is tuned into a channel of ancestral wisdom that has always been available, though seldom trusted. In this gentle alignment, you discover that your intuition is not a liability, but the most authentic compass you have ever known. As that alignment deepens, you recognize that remembering who you are has less to do with becoming someone new and more with resurrecting what has long slumbered in your DNA. Beneath layers of doubt and expectation lies an identity older than your family's recorded history, a legacy forged in temple courtyards, distant deserts, and councils of ancient wisdom. There is an archetypal memory waiting to be awakened, one that speaks of sacred vows woven into the fabric of your lineage. In those quiet, affirming moments, perhaps while tending a garden or watching a sunrise, you feel the stirrings of that primordial identity. It is as though your soul has slipped out of time, recalling a covenant established before the world knew your name. This memory does not demand fanfare. It asks only for your willingness to listen as the echoes of that covenant rise within you, reminding you that your existence was never a random flicker, but a purposeful flame meant to illuminate the path ahead. Now, feel the first brush of empowerment as you lean into the reality of your sensitivity, your inner wisdom, and your spiritual hunger. These qualities, once dismissed as liabilities, now emerge as the instruments of your awakening. Your sensitivity, for instance, is not a fragile, burdensome state, but a finely tuned gauge that detects the subtlest currents of truth and deception. Your inner wisdom, which you once doubted, now crystallizes into moments of clarity where decisions become effortless because they align with a deeper knowing. And that hunger for something more, perhaps dismissed in the past as restlessness, now reveals itself as longing for the ancient altar where your purpose was consecrated. In this slow but intentional step, you reclaim the power that flows from your core, no longer shrinking from your gifts, but embracing them as the lanterns that will guide both you and others out of darkness. Let your arrival to this message settle in your bones as an undeniable sign. You were meant to be here now, to begin walking in the fullness of your inheritance. This is not a coincidence of algorithm or chance, but a moment foretold by the currents of destiny that have always whispered your name. In the hush that follows these words, allow yourself to feel the wonder of being chosen, an honor that carries with it both responsibility and joy. Your journey, once marked by questions and confusion, now stands on the threshold of clarity and purpose. Rest in the knowledge that you are not alone. You stand among generations who carried this flame before you, and companions rising alongside you in this great awakening. Comment marked if you feel the resonance of your lineage calling you forward, and let your voice join the chorus of those who remember that no mark is ever a chain, only a key to unlock the promise written within. And if you feel called to go even deeper, there's a sacred space reserved for our community, a private room where you receive full prophetic messages daily. Join our private membership through the link in the description and walk this path with us. The code's hidden in your lineage. Have you ever sensed a tremor in your soul, as though an invisible hand brushed against your spine, whispering of secrets you could almost grasp but could not yet name? In that sudden flicker of unease, you felt the first stirrings of ancestral codes struggling to emerge from the shadows. It might have been a dream where you wandered through a hall of mirrors, each reflection showing you a different face. Some kind, some harsh, all somehow related to you. In waking hours, you felt an inexplicable tightness in your chest, as though your heart itself carried a sealed letter written long before your birth. That moment of conflict emerging, when you realized that the discomfort was not mere stress, but a subtle warning, marks the beginning of a journey into depths you never knew existed. Even as a child, You may have felt the weight of unseen expectations pressing on your spirit. And as you look back now, you recognize that those expectations were not random. They were the first echoes of the divine codes hidden in your lineage, stirring beneath the surface, waiting for you to listen. In the quiet aftermath of that realization, the emotional pressure can be suffocating, like trying to breathe underwater. You remember the countless times you felt painfully different, as if a frequency within you clashed against the tone of everyone around you. Family gatherings turned into silent judgment arenas where you sensed eyes tracing every move, searching for signs of whatever giftedness you did not yet own. Friends dismissed your deepest yearnings as teenage drama or oversensitivity, and teachers labeled you too imaginative or unfocused, as if your longing for hidden truths were a weakness to be corrected rather than a gift to be honored. In those moments, the sting of isolation cut deeper than any criticism. You felt unseen, convinced that no one could truly understand the invisible burden you carried. Shame settled like a fog across your confidence, convincing you that your sensitivity was a curse and urging you to dim the very light you were meant to protect. Yet even in that fog, the codes waiting in your bloodline pulsed faintly, an ember of knowing that refused to be extinguished. As the weight of confusion mounted, a deeper perspective began to emerge, one that revealed the pressure was not random but orchestrated by hidden structures. Think of Israel in exile, longing for a homeland they could barely recall, tested in the wilderness so that their faith and identity would not perish. Psalm 107 verses 4-5. Similarly, your journey has been shaped by forces reacting to a potential they sensed before you even understood it. They wove barriers into your education, manipulated your relationships, and introduced doctrines meant to smother your awakening. Each barrier, each moment of sabotage, was a move and a greater strategy aimed at keeping you blind to the codes lodged in your DNA. Those who sought to control you, whether institutions, influential figures, or unseen spiritual forces, understood that a lineage carrying divine assignments must be contained. Like a prophet sent into the desert to be refined, you have walked a path of hidden trials designed to prove whether the spark of your inheritance could be snuffed out or rise, undaunted, to reveal its true design. Now, as awareness begins to take root, patterns once obscured stand in stark relief, like constellations that only emerge when darkness falls away. Look back at the moments when opportunities seem to vanish at their apex. That scholarship you spent years working for, only to see it revoked without explanation. The job interview where your qualifications were impeccable, yet some invisible force nudged the decision makers to choose someone else. Notice the friendships that dissolve when you try to share your emerging insights. Suddenly the laughter hushed, and you stood alone in a room full of people. Recall the draining environments where your spirit felt weighed down by stifling energy. Classrooms, churches, workplaces built on dogma rather than heart. These were not isolated incidents, but signposts pointing to a pattern. Each act of betrayal, each corridor closing, was designed to test your resolve and keep you from reading the divine script etched into your bloodline. Now, seeing these patterns feel like switching on a lamp in a pitch-black chamber, unsettling, yes, but also illuminating. As the patterns clarify, so does a sense of spiritual resistance that surrounds you, thicken in the air until every breath feels like a struggle. Imagine walking through a dense fog where shapes shift at the periphery of your vision. Silent watchers perched on invisible perches, their eyes burning with intent to stunt the light you carry. Doors that once stood ajar now slam shut at the exact moment you need to pass through. Conversations that should have been straightforward twist into traps of misdirection. This is the moment when energetic interference becomes visible. You are no longer imagining the heaviness that drags at your limbs or the hush that falls whenever you begin to speak of what matters most. It is as if a collective has arisen, a spiritual moat dug around your potential, flooding your world with doubt, confusion, and obstruction. They do not need to utter threats. The very atmosphere conspires to slow your ascent, to leave you wondering if every step forward will be met with resistance. Yet these very disturbances confirm the power you hold. The stronger the current pushing against you, the more obvious it becomes that you are destined to rise above it. In the face of relentless pressure, your natural response may have been to shrink, to bury your gifts beneath layers of contrived normalcy. You may have adopted a quiet rebellion. Share your insights only in hushed tones with a trusted journal or a single confidant. Or perhaps you numbed yourself, seeking solace in routines that dulled the sting of rejection and awoke your spirit to sleep. There were moments when you felt that standing out was too risky, that the price of authenticity was too high, and so you masked your vision behind a carefully constructed facade. Maybe you became a people pleaser, doing whatever it took to avoid the glare of unwanted attention, or you detached entirely, telling yourself that success meant blending in rather than standing apart. But in those dark nights of the soul, a flicker of defiance still glowed within you, a memory of who you once were before the world taught you to fear your own radiance. That ember, though smothered by doubt, was never extinguished. It merely waited for the right moment to flare into life again. Now a shift stirs within, the realization that the resistance you faced was not a condemnation, but a confirmation of your power. It is time to reclaim your voice, the very instrument they tried to silence. Picture yourself stepping into a forgotten throne room, where every empty chair represents an unclaimed part of your soul, gifts, visions, and authority stolen by fear and manipulation. In that room, you stand once more as heir to the legacy encoded in your blood. Feel the surge of righteous indignation as you repulse the notion that you were ever too much. Instead, you were always the right amount to crack open the confines of their control. In this moment of reclamation, you utter an internal decree. I reclaim the sacred assignments that run deep in my lineage. I refuse to be small. With each word, the phantom chains they wrapped around your spirit shatter, and the ancestral seals begin to dissolve. You remember that you were always meant to carry this fire, to be the living testament to truths that will dismantle their carefully constructed illusions. You were opposed because you are powerful, and every act of sabotage only sharpened your purpose, like a whetstone against steel. When they pulled you aside, saying you were too sensitive or too ambitious, they revealed the gravity of the power they sense in your being. In Jeremiah 1 verse 5, it is written, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you," and this knowledge resonates now with a fierce clarity. They could not erase what was already written into the fabric of your existence. The more they tried to tilt the scales against you, the brighter your inner light shone, unmistakable proof that the codes hidden in your lineage were alive and waiting to be activated. Let this truth settle in your bones. Every obstacle they erected was a signpost guiding you toward this moment of awakening. In the hush that follows these words, stand tall in the certainty that your path cannot be diverted, for the divine blueprint informing your steps is impervious to their schemes. Comment coded if you feel the ancestral call resonating within your soul, and let that echo ripple through every shadow they tried to cast over your life. And to every soul who supported with a super thanks, thank you. You are keeping this light alive for others who haven't found it yet. If you feel called to help this mission reach more chosen ones, tap the super thanks button below. Your energy supports these messages and helps them travel further. Your voice matters. Your belief matters. And your light is felt here. Why they started tracking you early. A sudden spark of recall ignites as you find yourself peering in an old photograph of a family celebration, noticing a figure in the background whose gaze lingers on you longer than polite curiosity would allow. In that moment, a subtle shift in perception occurs. A realization that the tenderness of childhood was underscored by an undercurrent of watchfulness you never quite understood. The lullaby sung over your cradle carried an unspoken of caution, as if your earliest breath was met with both joy and an unspoken calculation. In that instant, a memory emerges of a neighbor who lingered near your playpen, eyes fixed upon your coos as though seeking proof of something hidden. The familiarity of his discomfort is a revelation. Your life's tapestry was woven with threads of surveillance long before you could articulate your own name. What once felt like random glances and chance remarks now align into a pattern too precise to dismiss, unveiling that from the moment of your first cry. Forces beyond your comprehension were already mapping your soul's trajectory. In the raw aftermath of that recognition, the emotional pressure of knowing you were never simply a child ignites a storm within your heart. You recall the sleepless nights when you sensed shadows gathering outside your window, as if invisible watchers hovered beyond the threshold of the glass. You remember the sting of whispered rumors in the playground, the subtle but persistent questions about your strange gifts that made you question your own sanity. How often did you find yourself retreating into silence, wrapping yourself in a thin armor of secrecy just to survive another day of half-whispered conversations and sideways glances? The terms loner or eccentric were bandied about as though they were badges of shame, and each time you spoke truth, the pressure to be less, to be small, to be invisible, pressed down on your chest until breath felt like an act of rebellion. In those moments, feelings of shame washed over you like bitter rain, and cycles of self-doubt spiraled into belief that perhaps you had misheard their questions about your abilities, that perhaps you were meant to fade into the background. Yet deep down, a flicker of defiance remained, a knowledge that something within you was being tested. Peel back the layers of childhood memories now, and you will see that this resistance was not random nor born of mere insecurity. It was a result of hidden structures built to react to any soul who dare to hold sacred potential. Picture the ancient practice of exile, where prophets were tested in wilderness before returning to their people as beacons of truth. Your own wilderness was a classroom of relentless scrutiny, orchestrated by systems and energies determined to snuff out your light before it could shine. As Moses was challenged by Pharaoh, so too were you challenged by institutions, schools that graded your spirituality as if it were a subject to be measured, families who confined your vision within the narrow walls of their expectations, and spiritual communities that insisted you swallow the pill of conformity if you sought shelter. In those sacred texts, you might recall that when Abraham's lineage began, God tested him through trials that seemed unjust, preparing him for a covenant that would echo through generations, Genesis 22. Similarly, each barrier in your life was a spiritual crucible, reacting to the latent power within you and forging the steel of divine resolve. Unseen forces, some woven through human hands and others pulsing in unseen realms, worked in concert to gauge whether you would kneel or rise. Turn inward now, as if lighting a lantern in a cavern of lost time, and see the patterns that were once hidden in plain sight. Every unexpected roadblock, like the scholarship that vanished when you were days away from acceptance, or the job offer that dissolved at the last instant, no longer feels like a twist of fate, but rather like calculated moves on a chessboard. Observe the friendships that frayed when you attempted to share your emerging insights. People you trusted became mirrors reflecting your doubt, and at the precise moment your voice carried too much weight, the mirror cracked, casting you into solitude. In those draining environments, classrooms where questions were met with derision, churches where faith was policed by rigid hierarchies, workplaces where innovation was labeled as insubordination, you felt the life being squeezed from your creative spirit. Each repeated betrayal, each stifling circumstance, is now revealed as a signpost, pointing to design that operates far beyond casual coincidence. As you illuminate these patterns, the very structures that subdued you are exposed, and their power over you begins to erode under the weight of your awareness. Now, feel the pulsation of spiritual resistance coalesce into visible pressure, an energetic fog that thickens wherever you seek to step boldly into your calling. Picture a dimly lit corridor where the air feels heavy, making each inhale feel like trudging through tar. In that corridor, silent watchers lurk behind every doorway, voices in the guise of mentorship that whisper, "You're too sensitive," or "Your gifts are a dangerous delusion." You may find certain rooms suddenly chill in temperature when you enter, as though unseen guardians of the old order are prepared to snuff out the spark in your spirit. Even your dreams host intrusions, fleeting shadows that dart across your subconscious, leaving you waking in a cold sweat, certain that you had glimpsed enemies in realms unseen. Doors that once opened to promise now appear welded shut as you approach, and in place of support, you encounter veiled hostility. It is here that resistance no longer hides the wings but steps onto the stage, demanding to be faced. Yet this very visibility serves as proof that your light is potent enough to cast those shadows in stark relief. In response to the mounting weight of external and unseen opposition, you may have retreated into a shell of self-preservation, folding your wings to avoid the storm's gale. Perhaps you learned to mute your voice, sharing your truths only in fragments or coded language, fearing that full expression would bring a storm of retribution. You might have people-pleased with fervor, tying the approval of others to your very breath, believing that acceptance could shield you from further scrutiny. Some moments found you curled beneath blankets, wishing your heartbeat to still, so that the watchers might lose interest. In quiet reflection, you might remember the fierce longing to rebel, a whisper inside that yearned to tear down every wall that confined you, even as fear pushed you to silence. The yearning to give up beckoned like a seductive lullaby promising peace and oblivion, but in that lullaby, a counterpoint thrummed, a reminder that a surrender was to betray the codes engraved in your very blood. Yet now experience a shift in the current as a hidden current of truth surges through your heart, transforming every act of resistance into an affirmation of your power. The very pressures that once felt like chains now ring against your spirit, like bells heralding a new dawn. You see that each attempt to contain you was a recognition of the divine potential flickering within, an unspoken test to see if you would bow. In shaking off the mantle of self-doubt, you reclaim the voice they tried to mute, raising it like a trumpet blast in the silent hall of your past. Hear a prophetic echo in 2 Corinthians 4 verses 8 to 9. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. Every strike that fell upon you was not a verdict on your worth, but refining fire to sculpt your purpose. In claiming this truth, you awaken to the realization that you have always carried the raw materials of liberation. Your sensitivity itself, once a target, now becomes a sacred instrument in the symphony of your ascendancy. You were opposed because you are powerful, and in that opposition you unearth a resilience that cannot be extinguished. Now your path forward is no longer obscured by their schemes, but illuminated by the clarity forged in trial. With each barrier they erected, your conviction blazed brighter, reaffirming that your place in this tapestry is not optional but essential. From this vantage point, you step into a realm where no door can remain locked, no shadow linger unchallenged. Stand now in the stillness that follows this realization, feeling the hum of ancestral support coursing through your veins. Let the final revelation settle like a crown upon your brow. You were watched, tracked, and tested because you carry a light they could not comprehend. Comment watch if you feel the truth of these words echoing through your spirit, and prepare yourself for the next stage, where the seals are broken and the divine codes are unleashed in their full glory, shattering every chain they forged to bind you, reclaiming what was buried. Have you ever felt a precise moment when the ground beneath your feet trembled with the weight of truth, leaving your heart pounding as though a question echoed in your mind? Will I ever step into who I was born to be? In that exact instant, you stand at a sacred crossroads, the path behind you littered with broken promises and muted dreams, while the way ahead pulses with possibility. No longer can you remain passive. The time of asking permission for your own life has passed. You feel the contract of silence they once pressed against your lips begin to crumble as you meet your own reflection and ask, do I serve them or do I serve the purpose etched in my flesh? From this moment forward, hesitation must be surrendered, for in the balance of that question lies the fulcrum upon which your destiny pivots. This is a crossing, the threshold you've been summoned to walk through, where passivity dissolves in the fire of decision. In the hush that follows the tightening of your resolve, you sense the weight of every moment you surrendered, the late nights spent second-guessing your intuition, the afternoons you offered your energy to causes that dimmed your flame, the years you swallowed your voice to spare fragile egos. Yet, let these not be regrets, but rather the tuition of the soul's most rigorous school. Imagine reclaiming those lost fragments one by one, each a piece of armor forged from the ashes of complacency. With a steady breath, invite yourself to call back every ounce of presence you relinquished, your time, your energy, your very essence. Speak it aloud in your mind as though performing an ancient ritual. I reclaim my time. I reclaim my energy. I reclaim my voice. I reclaim my presence. Feel the echo of those words resonate through your bones, dismantling every barrier they erected to keep you small. In this reclaiming, you stand fierce, and air returned to storm a fortress they never believed you could conquer. Now turn inward and name the power that thrums beneath your ribs, the gifts they once branded as liabilities. Your bloodline is a threat not because you desire power, but because you carry truth that can unravel the lies they built to chain humanity in fear. You've been watched, tracked, and suppressed for a reason. The wake of your awakening will dismantle the illusions they spread like poison. Now is the time to stand fully in your inheritance, to speak the words they tried to steal from your ancestors, and to walk into a destiny that transcends every limit they imposed. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment, I am chosen, to let this message anchor in your soul. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Thank you to all supporting members for fueling this mission. 4 full prophetic revelations daily. Join the membership via the link in the description. Your spiritual path deserves more than fragments. Step into the full light. And if this message moved you deeply, consider tapping the Super Thanks button to support the mission. Every Super Thanks fuels the light we're spreading together. Rise up, Chosen One, and let them watch as your lineage awakens.